Welcome everyone to this live broadcast of Manufacturing Talk Radio. I'm Tim Grady and I'm here with Lou Weiss, who is president of All Metals and Forge Group, the sponsor for Manufacturing Talk Radio. They make industrial forgings like the large gears you see behind us. So if you're looking for industrial forgings or seamless rolled rings, you can find them at steelforge.com. Joining us is Anthony Nieves, who gives us the services report on business published by the Institute for Supply Management, a report that looks particularly good this month. Anthony, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the show.
So give us a summary of what looks to be a very strong report. We continue to be well above 50. I'm feeling really good about this.
Well, considering all that's going on in the world, yes, we still have a strong reading at 57.1, albeit it came down a bit from last month's reading of 58.3. It's down 1.2 percentage points. We have the sub-indexes that comprise this composite, which consists of business activity, new orders, employment, and supplier deliveries. Our respondents are telling us that the report would have even been better if we didn't have some pullback in the numbers as it relates to new orders. So we still have growth there, but it's slowing slightly. It came down from, I shouldn't say slightly, it came down 5.5 percentage points from 60.1. And the other index that kind of pulled this back a bit was employment. We've had this ongoing challenge with employment. Hyper-competitive market out there for employees, restricted labor pool, been ongoing. Even before, it was pre-pandemic, we were running into difficulty as far as various companies in finding employees, and now it just seems to be exacerbated by the increased demand that we've experienced coming out of this pandemic, and with the reopening of all these businesses and transitioning of careers and people not re-entering the workforce, a litany of different variables that have affected the employment. So we are seeing the low unemployment as a result of that, as well as wage pressure increasing. So overall, it's like you said, Tim, very good report.
We saw during the week about the work shortage, and they came out with numbers. I believe the number was that we have 11.5 million shortage in the work pool, and 4.5 million people have quit. So that quitting, the grand resignation to whatever degree, is still going on, in spite of the fact that we also had a record so far of the number of new businesses that are opening up. So I would say that some of those people who were quitting opened up businesses, of which 90% will go out of business by the end of the year. So this is kind of a mishmash of what's going on. There's no clear going forward, even though the numbers are good.
Yes, and you know, we have the inflation pressure right now, or it's definitely, we thought, or I should say many thought way back, that it was transitory. It's been ongoing. Hopefully we see the prices come down from that with the Fed meeting today, looking at another raise of interest rates. Still strong, but it's down slightly from previous months, and that has to do with the sentiment and the confidence level. But we still haven't caught up. Supply has not caught up to the demand yet. So, but I think with where we're seeing prices come off a little bit on the fuel side of things and some other areas, it's still, I would be remiss in not mentioning that this 84.6 that we have this month set another all-time high for the prices index for the report on business. And the prior one was set in December of 2021.
Huge number.
Definitely.
That's a big jump. Anthony, I wonder if you would just walk our viewers, listeners through each of these segments. And when we get down to imports, I want to check with you to see if the services sector is feeling import pain from the Russia-Ukraine issue.
Certainly. So as we look at the rest of the indexes going from business activity, we spoke about the composite business activity at 59.1. good reading, up 3.6 percentage points month over month. That's where you see the orders, new orders getting transposed into this activity. And we had some strong readings in the new orders index prior to this month. Employment we touched on. Supplier deliveries continue to slow. 1.7 percentage point increase month over month. Even though things seem to be less bogged down in the supply chain, we still have capacity constraints, still lack of trucks, even though the demand for trucking, from what I read recently, is that it's a little bit less, but it depends on the area of the country as well. Inventories continue to be replenished. They're up slightly 0.6 percentage points. Prices we talked about. Backlog, 59.4. It's down 5.1 percentage points. Keep in mind, we're measuring change month over month. So we're still seeing backlog. Anything over 50 is an increase of that measurement. We look at export orders at 58.1. It's down 2.9 percentage points month over month from the 61. And imports. Now, Tim, you asked about imports, 52.9. It came up 7.9 percentage points for this sector. And that has to do with the fact that we had the Chinese New Year. We also were contending with various factory closures, city closures with the rise in COVID cases over in Asia, specifically in China. Now, since the last report, we've had some of those plants reopen, and now they're closing again. There's been a rise in cases over there, just as we've had some spike in cases over here. Not as bad as what we had with Omicron, but we're starting to see some cases increase here. So that has affected imports as far as the continuity of supply, as well as you talk about Russia and Ukraine war. That's affected not only gas and chemicals and also chips and because neon's manufactured over in the Ukraine. So we've had some issues with supply there. It's affecting Europe more so than it is here in this country, but overall it is having an impact on the supply chain.
What I find interesting, Anthony, about the pricing remained almost where it was a month ago.
And that's the rate of growth. So that's an increase month over month.
Right.
Yeah, clearly that's huge. Anthony, I'm just wondering if on the import side, just to circle back to that for a moment, most of what I see with the Ukraine war or the invasion of Ukraine is raw materials that we import from Ukraine that would go into manufacturing, not necessarily goods that would be sold at retail. Would that be consistent with what the services sector is seeing, that you're not being as badly impacted as the manufacturing side?
It's upstream, definitely in the supply chain for services companies, but think of what it affects. Technology, right? Technology equipment, computer equipment and parts, chips is the big thing right there. And we're seeing that as a commodity that's up in price and short supply. And it's affecting, as we know, car manufacturing. So there are various, and with chemicals is another big one. So we're seeing it not so much directly impacting the services, and I shouldn't even say that because it does directly impact it as it gets pulled through the supply chain into the finished product. It's just that we're not feeling the initial touches of it because it is upstream on the manufacturing side.
One of the interesting things that occurred, I guess, about a week ago, the United States did away with and gave relief to Ukraine on steel tariffs, like the steel tariffs from China, but we had steel tariffs on the Ukraine. That was 3 days after they bombed the steel mill that can't produce any more steel. So I thought that was a real humane thing that we did. And they don't have steel to export because they're going to need all they can to ultimately rebuild if they ever stop the war.
Yeah, hopefully these sanctions and this world pressure, global pressure I just feel that Russia's being, they're very stubborn right now in their, and steadfast in their invasion. So it's just I hope that we don't have any more political fallout from this. Besides, as you said, the whole humane side of things, the humanity part of it, people dying and everything else, there's nothing good coming out of this.
Nothing good can come out of it.
Anthony, I'm curious, is anything getting caught up? Goods being delivered to retail stores, the transportation sector, moving goods from warehouses to stores. Is anything improving?
You wouldn't get that from any of these indexes because we're still seeing the delivery slowing, right? We still have the backlog. I feel that the rate in which we're seeing that this month, especially in backlog, you can see it came down to 5.1 percentage points, but we still have backlog. So it kind of goes in hand with what other sources are saying about how the bottlenecks are kind of easing a little bit in the supply chain. And keep in mind that the respondents had mentioned to us in the past in this report that companies were increasing their orders, doubling up on their orders in order to try and stave off this strong demand that they were trying to catch up with. So that's why, again, we see the new orders growth down a little bit, still growing month over month, but down from where it was on the prior month. So, which leads me to believe, as we're seeing inventories replenished and whatnot, hopefully with some of these impediments that have been in place with the trucking and transportation, as you mentioned, and other things, that as demand is waning just a little bit, slightly, we'll see this come back into a more manageable space as it relates to the logistics and whatnot.
The comments from your individuals that you ask questions about how are they being affected. And I was reading those comments, and the numbers and the percentages. It's a fairly high percentage where the labor and talent issue is pretty much on the forefront of any discussion.
Yes, for sure. It's been an ongoing challenge. It's as you talked about earlier, Lou, it's people not re-entering the workforce. They did try, whether they're starting their own businesses or choose to stay on the sidelines and to, we identify that as kind of some of the gray markets out there where you really don't even get to count what they're doing. We just know that they're not in the workforce. Right. And it's, again, the one comment I extrapolated and put into the body of the report is one of the respondents saying it's hyper competitive out there. And it's like left pocket, right pocket. Somebody leaves one company to go to another company. So it fills a void in one place, but creates it somewhere else.
Right, right.
So the employment number where it is, the low, with such low unemployment, people are choosy. The strength is with them right now with the workers.
I did hear something about the feds adjusting the visitors' visas so that we can bring over, for example, refugees, workers, blue collar machinists, and so on from the Ukraine, instead of letting them wander around Europe, which is not doing that great right now. Bring them here, set up training programs, and get them placed. They had 4 million people left Ukraine. There's got to be 1 million workers that would like to come to America.
Well, you have my vote for labor secretary. So I think you got the strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know this is not a difficult thing to think about.
Well, and to your point, Europe's not doing very well right now. In fact, all indications are, if everyone, as you mentioned last month about the big R, recession,
right,
they will definitely get there before we ever do.
Yeah, absolutely. And as of today or yesterday, I heard that the UK is talking to be unified to cut out Russian oil and gas in Europe because
Yes.
they're not paying in rubles. And I don't know who that's going to hurt more, the Europeans or the Russians, but we could sell it to them. We could even sell it to them at a discount.
We sure could.
Anything to bury the issue that's going on in Russia.
Well, again, I hope these economic sanctions, it seems to be, from what I see, it's hard to tell at this point. It hasn't really staved anything yet, but
Right.
hopefully it does cause this to cease. And I think it's a smart move to do it that way rather than just sending in military, because that would just be a geopolitical nightmare.
Yep, absolutely. And we've done that so many times. We know what's about it. Jim?
Anthony, I'm just curious, as we look at this report, we see prices moving up aggressively. The Fed probably will raise the rate by 50 basis points. That will make it more expensive to do business because lending will become more expensive. What are the headwinds? Those are pretty big ones. We've got labor, we've got prices. Those generally are the headwinds that clip off the wings of an expansion.
You would think for sure, as well as, those, what you just mentioned. And the other one that I would throw in there as a potential headwind is that we don't have a relapse and have increased COVID cases. It seems that, it's hard to believe how low percentage of the population is vaccinated, number one. Number two, some of these variants that are coming out now, it doesn't matter if you're vaccinated, you might get it anyway. It's just the severity of it. But hospital cases are definitely up. They're starting to get a little stressed again in the hospitals across the country. And so hopefully that does not pan out to be an additional headwind to be concerned about for the services sector.
Well, they may not be doing abortions anymore in hospitals. So
Are we going down that road now? We're getting on the political talk show road.
I don't talk politics. I just stir the mud.
You just leave it out there for me to make a comment about it.
Go
Huh?
ahead, go for it. I threw it out. That's laying out there like a latke.
All I can say is I didn't leak the news. I didn't do it.
Right.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, Anthony. On Monday, we're going to be doing our interview of Nancy Lemaster, who presents the Hospital Purchasing Managers Index, and we always watch that carefully to see what's happening at on the hospital front, because they're the front lines on this, and we have seen some softening until maybe this recent report where again we have a rise in cases, and I would agree with you that could be another headwind that becomes unpredictable if we get a spike. So I want to remind our listeners that on Monday we'll have that report. I also want to remind them that we have a very interesting cover story in our Manufacturing Outlook digital magazine coming up on the labor issue. Really breaks it down and spells it out. So I would encourage them to go there. Anthony, as we kind of get to the point to wrap up this segment, anything else you want to share with our audience on the services side?
Well, I think that what we're seeing right now with the activity where it is, and everyone's concerned about how long we're going to stay in expansion territory, and are we going to see a recession? Keep in mind that many of the variables that cause a recession to happen, number one, we can't be convincing ourselves we're going into a recession, right? Number two is when GDP goes down, and even though we've had a decrease in GDP, I don't foresee it staying that way. That we'll still see some increases going forward. Unemployment is low. Usually in a recession we see high unemployment, right? And then also, as far as inflation is concerned, I mean, the Fed's doing what they have to do. They have to, their monetary policy is such that they're looking to, nip it in the bud, so to speak. And and raise the rates. And even though it's negatively impacting the markets, hopefully it will bring inflation and rein it in. And so I think where we are right now, we're nowhere near as overheating as far as the economy is concerned. So I wouldn't be concerned about a recession, not in the next 12 months. So hopefully we'll stay on this track. I think that we'll continue to see incremental growth going forward for the services sector.
Seems to be the way it's going. You know, we're talking with Tim Fiore 2 days ago on the manufacturing, the ISM for manufacturing, and there too, he also is predicting that this continuing upswing of ours is going to continue into 2022, 23, based on the numbers that he put together. So this is a strange environment we're living in. There's a lot of uncertainties and yet growth. So
definitely, and I'm glad to hear he said something similar, because we don't communicate as far as what we say on either of these shows. So it's kind of, if he said something completely opposite, I would say, oh boy.
oh, well, I'm glad you told me that. I don't want to put you in that position ever. So,
No, that's okay. The numbers are what the numbers are. You know, someone once said to me, well, your numbers are wrong. I said, well, they can't be wrong. You know, we're surveying respondents, and that's what they're telling us. It's what they're saying happens in their companies. So they can't ever be wrong.
it's just what it is.
Exactly. And when you look at it historically, how it maps against GDP for the last 15, 20 years, it's almost a mirror image. So to me, and this is one of the most forward pieces of information you'll get. First and third business day of the month.
There's always All Metals and Forge Group. I've been following the ISM numbers for decades, and we are usually right in lockstep with you, except for about a year and a half worth during this COVID thing. But we on the metals manufacturing side, I love your numbers. I can tell.
I agree. That's why you guys have the yellow jackets.
That's right. That's right. And you're working hard trying to collect points to get your yellow jacket. I'll make a note here to look up and see how many points you have.
Well, you need to look at how many sessions that I've participated in compared to the past chairs that have been involved. I think I'm exceeding. I think my numbers are up there.
Pretty much. So, well, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing this with us. Tim?
Yeah, we certainly appreciate it. And we encourage our viewers and listeners to go to ismworld.org, where you can find both. Well, you can find the manufacturing report, the services report, the hospital report. If you're in the supply chain industry and you want to become a certified supply chain manager, they also have great courses at ISM, so you can get that certification. And while you're surfing around the web, stop by jacketmediaco.com, where you can find this episode as well as almost 800 other episodes of shows that we have done for Manufacturing Talk Radio, the WHAM podcast, Hazard Girls, and the monthly shows that we do. Stop by often. There's a lot to check out. Thanks for listening.
You ought to do some commercials for us. I mean, you're long-winded today, which is good. It's good. All right, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Keep your numbers up. Appreciate it.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.
Bye.